The morning Emma Chen died started like any other on Proxima B colony. The artificial dawn crept across the biodome's ceiling, painting the hydroponic gardens in shades of rose and gold. Emma, all of 8 years old and full of the particular brand of mischief that came with being the first human child born on an alien world, was busy trying to convince the colony's AI that she really needed an extra helping of synthesized chocolate for breakfast. Coloni system alert, the speakers chimed in a voice that somehow managed to sound both urgent and bored. Did anyone order a massive warship? Because there's one in orbit. No, just checking. Might want to look into that. Dr. Maya Chen, Emma's mother and lead xenobotanist, glanced up from her morning reports. Cass, tone down the sarcasm and give me actual threat assessment. Oh, sure, because being serious makes the giant alien death ship less threatening, Cass replied. Fine, one Zaxlarian warship, Devastator class. Though honestly, who names their ships Devastator? Bit on the nose if you ask me. Shield signatures suggest they're charging weapons, but hey, I'm sure they're just here for a cup of sugar. Emma pressed her face against the biodome's transparent aluminum panels, her eyes wide with wonder rather than fear. The massive ship hung in the pink-tinged sky like a twisted metal sword. Mom, it looks like one of your failed soufflés. Thanks, sweetie, Maya muttered, already pulling up the emergency protocols on her tablet. Cass, open channel to the vessel. The response came immediately, a guttural voice speaking passable standard English. Primitive human colony. Your resources are now property of the Zaxlarian Empire. Comply or face consequences. Now, see here, Colony Administrator Chen Wei started, his voice steady despite the situation. This is a registered Earth colony under Galactic Convention protection. We're conducting peaceful research here and— Silence! The Zaxlarian commander's voice boomed through the speakers. Your pathetic treaties mean nothing. You have 10 minutes to begin resource transfer or receive warning shot. Emma tugged at her mother's sleeve. Mom, why are they being so rude? You always say please and thank you are important. Attention angry space guests, Cass interrupted. Maybe we could discuss this over coffee? We make excellent coffee. Well, technically it's algae-based caffeine substitute, but the shot came without warning. A lance of purple energy that should have harmlessly dissipated against the colony's shields that would have been operational if the Zaxlarians hadn't specifically targeted them first. The beam struck the biodome's weakest point, right where Emma stood watching the ship with childlike fascination. The transparent aluminum didn't so much shatter as vaporize. Maya's scream cut through the chaos that followed. It wasn't the scream of someone watching a tragedy, it was the sound of a mother's universe collapsing. The colony's cameras caught everything, the impact, the flash, the empty space where a little girl had stood seconds before. Cass's voice came back online, all traces of sarcasm gone. Emergency transmission to Earth completed, full footage uploaded. Timestamp 747 Colony Standard Time. The day humanity learned the true meaning of consequence. The Zaxlarian commander's voice returned, smug and self-satisfied. Now, about those resources. He had no way of knowing he'd just signed his entire species' death warrant with those words. No way of knowing that in the 17 minutes it would take his message to reach Earth, humanity would already be mobilizing a response that would be spoken of in whispers for millennia to come. End of Chapter 5. After all, Emma Chen had been humanity's first child born among the stars, and humanity had always been very protective of its children. The United Nations emergency session began exactly 23 minutes after Emma Chen's death. The Security Council chamber was packed, but eerily quiet. On the massive display screen, the footage from Proxima B played on loop, muted but impossible to ignore. Secretary General Patel stood at the podium, her face a mask of diplomatic calm. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished representatives, we are gathered here today because some individuals seem to have missed the memo about basic manners. Admiral James Chen, no relation to Emma, stepped forward, tablet in hand. The corner of his mouth twitched slightly. The Zaxlarians believe they caught us with our pants down. Permission to show them how wrong they are, Madam Secretary. Do enlighten us, Admiral. The holographic display shifted, showing what appeared to be simple cargo ships scattered throughout human space. As the Admiral tapped his tablet, the images transformed. Cargo containers split apart, revealing state-of-the-art weapon systems. Civilian stations unfolded into military installations. Research vessels shed their outer shells like butterflies emerging from chrysalises. Except these butterflies packed enough firepower to glass a continent. "We call it the Merchant Marine Masquerade," Admiral Chen explained, not quite managing to suppress his grin. The Zaxlarians scanned our territory extensively before their attack. They saw exactly what we wanted them to see, a peaceful species taking its first stumbling steps into space. The Russian representative leaned forward. "And the actual numbers? Instead of the 50 defensive vessels they detected? We have roughly 15,000 military ships ready for immediate deployment, plus another 30,000 that can be combat-ready within 72 hours. The Chinese ambassador actually laughed. All this time complaining about how expensive space exploration was, while we were actually building the largest stealth fleet in known space? Yes. Admiral Chen's expression turned predatory. We figured it was better to be thought primitive than to advertise our capabilities. Until now, Secretary General Mattel cleared her throat. "I believe we should send our guests a message before we proceed. Something diplomatic, of course." Fuller said, "Of course," the Admiral agreed. "I took the liberty of preparing a draft." The message that went out to the Zaxarian ship was brief. "Regarding your recent acquisition attempt at Proxima B Colony, you could have just asked nicely. We would have said no, but at least then what happens next would be entirely your fault. Please stand by for your complimentary demonstration of human technological capabilities. Have a nice day." As the council chamber erupted in dark chuckles, Admiral Chen made one final comment. "Oh, and we're copying this message to every species in known space. It's important to be thorough when making an example." The British representative raised an eyebrow. "Isn't that a bit theatrical?" "Says the nation that once went to war over someone's ear being cut off," the Spanish representative muttered. Secretary General Paddle rapped her gavel. "Ladies and gentlemen, let's focus. We have a civilization to politely educate about the consequences of their actions. Admiral, you may proceed with Operation Glasshouse." "With pleasure, Madam Secretary. With pleasure." Commander Elena Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the TNS Righteous Consequence, watching her crew prepare for humanity's first official act of interstellar warfare. The ship had spent the last decade disguised as a deep space mining vessel. Now its true form was something altogether more interesting. "Status report," she called out, hiding her amusement as her tactical officer attempted to straighten his party hat. "All systems operational, Commander," Lieutenant Park responded, adjusting the paper hat that read, "Surprise Party Coordinator." "Though I still think the party hats are a bit much." "Psychological warfare, Lieutenant. We want them confused before we want them scared." Rodriguez smiled, remembering her academy days. Back then they'd called her Smiling Death, not because she was particularly violent, but because she understood that terror worked best when gift-wrapped in cheerfulness. The bridge crew worked with practiced efficiency, their movements betraying years of secret drills and simulations. On the surface, humanity had spent the last 50 years playing at being space farmers and merchants. In reality, every cargo ship captain was a naval officer, every mining facility a weapon in disguise. "Commander," her XO, Marcus Williams, approached with a tablet. "The betting pool for surrender time is getting quite interesting. Engineering thinks 4 hours, medical's betting on 6. Personally, I've got credits on 2 hours flat." Rodriguez glanced at the statistics. "Put me down for 90 minutes. And add a side bet, I say their admiral faints when we reveal the Jupiter Defense Ring." The Jupiter Defense Ring. Rodriguez remembered being there 10 years ago when they finished it, a massive fleet of supposedly automated mining platforms circling the gas giant. In reality, each platform housed enough firepower to reduce a small moon to atoms. The Zaxlarians had scanned it multiple times, seeing only what humanity wanted them to see. "Last protocol parameters uploading now," announced Communications Officer Chen. "Interesting choice this time. Instead of traditional glassing, we're going for renovation?" Rodriguez nodded. "The UN decided destruction was too quick. They want something more educational." "Pull up the plans." The holographic display showed the Zaxlarian homeworld, then overlaid it with the transformation protocols. Several crew members let out appreciative whistles. "Now that," Lieutenant Park said, is what I call making a point. Speaking of points, Rodriguez turned to address the bridge. I know we're all enjoying this moment, but remember why we're here. Emma Chen was 8 years old. She liked synthesized chocolate and wanted to be a xenobotanist like her mother. Our job isn't just revenge. It's making sure nothing like this ever happens again. A moment of silence fell over the bridge, broken only by the soft beeping of console readouts. That said, she continued, a predatory smile spreading across her face, we're absolutely going to enjoy teaching this lesson. Deploy the full fleet. Let's show them what humanity's been hiding all these years. Across human space, thousands of ships shed their civilian disguises. Cargo containers transformed into weapon platforms. Passenger liners revealed military-grade shields. Research stations unfurled arrays of weaponry that had never been logged in any official database. The crew watched in appreciation as their supposedly primitive fleet transformed into the most advanced armada ever seen in the galaxy. Oh, Rodriguez added, and maintained radio silence until the revealing. I want to hear them trying to figure out where all these ships came from. She paused. Actually, scratch that. Play the Imperial March on all frequencies. Let's really commit to this. As the first notes of the Ancient Earth song began broadcasting across space, Rodriguez settled into her command chair. Now then, let's go explain to the Zaxlarians why please and thank you are important words to learn. And it is clear that by saying thank you all the time is not necessarily important. The Zaxalrian defense fleet hung in high orbit above their colony world, 19 ships arranged in textbook defensive formation. Supreme Commander Vexthor stood proud on his bridge, monitoring the approach of the primitive human vessels. Their scans showed only 3 small ships, barely more than armed merchant vessels. Supreme Commander, his sensor officer called out, "The humans are hailing us." "Put them on screen," Vexthor commanded, mandibles clicking in anticipation. "Let us hear their pleas for mercy." Commander Rodriguez's face appeared on the main view screen, looking inappropriately cheerful. "Hi there. We noticed you killed a child recently. Would you like to sign up for our complimentary civilization advancement program?" Vexthor's secondary eyes blinked in confusion. "You dare mock the might of the Zaxlarian Empire with 3 puny vessels, eh, Gran?" "Oh, these?" Rodriguez glanced around theatrically. No, these are just the welcome wagon. The rest of the party is running a bit late. Traffic, you know how it is. While we wait, want to hear a joke? What did the primitive human say to the overconfident alien? Your attempt at humor is nothing, they just waved. Rodriguez waved and then the sensors went crazy. Space around the Zaxlarian fleet suddenly filled with ships. Hundreds, then thousands of vessels seemed to materialize from nowhere as their stealth systems deactivated. Cargo ships transformed into dreadnoughts. Mining vessels revealed weapon arrays that made Vexthor's mandibles droop in shock. "Impossibles," he screeched. "Our scans?" "Oh, right, those scans." Rodriguez nodded sympathetically. Fun fact, turns out if you spend 50 years pretending to be really bad at military technology, people stop looking too hard at your merchant ships. Crazy, right? The Zaxlarian tactical officer was practically hyperventilating. "Supreme Commander, I'm reading energy signatures that can't be right. Their weapon systems are beyond anything in our database." "Now then," Rodriguez continued, her smile never wavering, "about that colony you attacked. We were thinking maybe we should discuss proper interstellar etiquette. Lesson 1, don't touch what isn't yours." The first shot from the human fleet didn't destroy anything. Instead, it somehow transformed the Zaxilian flagship's fearsome black hull into hot pink with glitter. "Lesson 2, Rodriguez continued, as Vexthor stared in horror at his now fabulous vessel. "Always ask nicely." "This is outrageous," Vexthor sputtered. "We demand immediate diplomatic negotiations." "Oh, now you want to talk?" A new voice cut in as another human ship decloaked directly behind the Zaxarian fleet. "Hi, this is Captain Chen. You know, related to that colony administrator whose day you ruined. Quick question. What's the difference between a Zaxarian warship and a garbage scow?" Despite himself, Vexthor asked. "What? The garbage scow serves a useful purpose." Chen's ship fired, and 3 Zaxlarian vessels found their weapons systems transformed into bubble generators. The next hour was the most humiliating in Zaxlarian military history. Their ships weren't destroyed. That would have been less embarrassing. Instead, the humans systematically demonstrated technological superiority in the most ridiculous ways possible. Weapons turned into firework launchers. Engines were reprogrammed to play dance music. Communication systems could only transmit in what humans called uwu speak. Finally, Vexthor broke. "Please, we surrender. Just stop with the modifications." "I'm sorry," Rodriguez replied. "I couldn't hear you over the sound of your ships playing Never Gonna Give You Up on repeat." "Could you say that again, this time with please and thank you?" "Please accept our surrender, thank you," Vexthor managed through gritted teeth. "See? Manners aren't so hard." Rodriguez's expression finally turned serious. "Now, about that colony attack. We've prepared a special presentation on why harming children is bad for your civilization's health. Don't worry, we've made sure every species in the galaxy has front-row seats to this demonstration." As if on cue, thousands more human ships dropped their cloaking fields, revealing an armada that stretched beyond the horizon of the Zaxlarian colony world. Each vessel's hull bore the same message in glowing letters: "Lesson in progress. Please take notes." "Oh, and Vexthor?" Rodriguez added. "The hot pink?" "Haha, it's permanent. We thought it would help you remember this chat." The systematic dismantling of Zaxlarian civilization took exactly 3 days, 4 hours, and 27 minutes. Not that anyone was counting, except, of course, for the massive holographic countdown displayed above every Zaxlarian city. Commander Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the righteous consequence, watching the final phase begin. Below, on the Zaxlarian homeworld, billions watched in horror as their mighty defense platforms transformed into elaborate water fountains, each one playing a different Earth musical number. "Status report on Operation Extreme Makeover?" she asked, sipping her coffee. "Phase 1 complete, Commander," Lieutenant Park reported. "All military installations have been converted. The orbital shipyards are now a series of zero-gravity botanical gardens, and their weapon factories are producing stuffed animals." The Zaxlarian High Command, gathered in their once imposing, now pink and sparkly central chamber, watched helplessly as their civilization was reorganized. They had expected destruction. They had prepared for death. They hadn't prepared for renovation. "Bring up the trial feed," Rodriguez commanded. "I want to make sure everyone's getting this." The galaxy's first unified broadcast began, reaching every known species. The trial was being held in what used to be the Zaxlarian War Academy, now transformed into an intergalactic courthouse, complete with comfortable seating and a frozen yogurt bar. Supreme Justice Chen Wei, former administrator of Proxima B Colony, presided. "This trial will now commence. For the record, please state your name." Former Supreme Commander Vexthor, still sporting his hot pink military uniform, stood. "This is outrageous. You can't just—" "Wrong answer," Wei interrupted. "Let's try again. When someone asks your name politely, you respond, 'Vexthor, please and thank you,'" the former commander muttered. The evidence presentation was brief but thorough. The footage from Proxima B played on repeat, interspersed with historical documentation of Zaxlarian aggression against other species. Then came humanity's sentence. "In recognition of your empire's contribution to galactic instability," Wei announced, "we sentence you to become an object lesson. Your entire civilization will be transformed into the galaxy's largest memorial park, dedicated to peace, cooperation, and proper manners." The transformation began immediately. Massive terraforming ships descended from orbit, their beams not destroying but reshaping. Military bases became playgrounds, weapon research facilities transformed into schools. The infamous Pit of Conquests became a petting zoo. At the center of the former capital city, a hologram of Emma Chen played on eternal loop, showing her asking Cass for extra chocolate, laughing at her mother's failed soufflés, and wondering why anyone would be rude when they could be nice instead. "Progress report," Rodriguez called out, watching the transformation unfold. 97% of military assets converted, Park replied. "Their entire defense fleet has been repurposed as an interstellar public transportation system. Free rides for everyone, but passengers must say please and thank you or the ships won't move. The final touch came as the massive words appeared in orbit, visible from the surface of every Zaxlarian world. Welcome to Imra's Majorial Park, where manners matter. You realize, her XO commented, that this is possibly the most elaborate timeout corner ever created? Rodriguez nodded. That's the point. We could have destroyed them, that's what they expected. Instead, we're making them sit and think about what they've done. For the next 1,000 years. The new park rules were simple. 1. All visitors must use proper manners. 2. Former Zaxlarian military personnel serve as tour guides, reciting the full history of why their civilization now runs the galaxy's largest theme park. 3. Every morning begins with the kindness pledge. 4. All revenue goes to the Galactic Education Fund. Final status? Rodriguez asked as the transformation neared completion. Zaxlarian weapons transformed into art installations. Military training replaced with hospitality courses. Their entire species is now contractually obligated to be the galaxy's most polite tour guides. Park paused. Oh, and their former Supreme Commander? He's been assigned to run the Please and Thank You puppet show for school groups. As the human fleet prepared to depart, Rodriguez sent one final message to the galaxy. Lesson complete. We trust this example will prevent the need for future demonstrations, but just in case, remember Emma. Remember what happens when you forget your manners, and remember that humans are always happy to provide refresher courses in civilization. The massive memorial park quickly became the galaxy's most popular destination. Visitors from thousands of species came to ride the converted warships, play in the former military bases, and watch the endless loop of a little girl who changed the course of galactic history. And if anyone ever felt the urge to attack a human colony again, they first had to pass through the park's main gate, where Emma's final message played on repeat. Being nice is easy. Being mean is expensive. Just ask the tour guides. They learned the hard way. The Galactic Council's emergency session following the Zaxlarian renovation set several records, including fastest treaty ratification and most unanimous vote while trembling. The new laws were simple, elegant, and backed by the kind of unanimous agreement that only comes from watching an entire civilization get transformed into a theme park. Article 1 of the Galactic Charter now read, "Don't mess with human colonies. Seriously, just don't." The various alien ambassadors had some interesting reactions to log. The Centaurians. "We always wondered why humans insisted on saying please and thank you so much. Now we understand. It wasn't politeness, it was a warning system." The Proxima Collective. "Their ability to weaponize kindness is terrifying." The Andromeda Alliance. "Note to all members, reroute all trade routes to avoid human space. No, we don't care if it takes longer. Yes, we'll pay the extra fuel costs." 6 months after the transformation, Maya Chen stood at the grand opening of Emma's Memorial Park. The former Zaxlarian capital spread out before her, its once militant architecture now softened with gardens, playgrounds, and the galaxy's largest collection of chocolate fountains. "I'm not sure about this," she said to Commander Rodriguez, who stood beside her. "Emma would have found this whole thing hilarious, but that's exactly why it's perfect," Rodriguez replied. "We didn't just make an example, we made her kind of example. Look." She pointed to where a former Zaxlarian general, now wearing a sparkly tour guide uniform, was explaining to a group of alien children why saying please and thank you was important. His expression suggested he'd rather be facing a firing squad, which made it even better. The warning beacons around Earth space became tourist attractions in their own right. They played cheerful messages on loop. "Welcome to human space. We're very friendly. Let's keep it that way. Attention visitors, politeness required beyond this point. Ask the Zaxlarians why." Human space tourism tip 1. All our weapons are cake decorations. Unless they're not. Isn't uncertainty fun? The most popular spot in the park quickly became the before and after museum. Tourists lined up for hours to take selfies next to the giant hologram, comparing the Zaxlarian warfleet to its current form as an interstellar public transport system. The gift shop did brisk business selling shirts reading, "I visited the example, and all I got was this important lesson about consequences." Maya's attention was drawn to a small Zaxlarian child tugging on her sleeve. "Excuse me, please," the child said carefully, clearly having practiced the words. "But are you Emma's mother?" "Yes, I am. Thank you for not destroying our world," the child said solemnly. "The history videos say you suggested the transformation instead, that it was better to teach than to punish." Maya knelt down to the child's level. "Emma would have wanted it this way. She always said everything was better with ice cream and roller coasters." End quote. Above them, the artificial sky projected Emma's laugh across the park as another tour group passed by. Their guide, the former Supreme Commander Vex Thor himself, could be heard reciting, "And that, visitors, is why proper manners are important. Now, who would like to visit the Kindness Training Center? It used to be my war room, but the ball pit is much more popular." Maya smiled, watching aliens from across the galaxy learning, playing, and most importantly, remembering. "You know what, Emma?" she whispered. "I think we made your point 200 years later." "But why, Mom?" asked little Vexka, her mandibles twitching with curiosity as their transport ship approached the annual Galactic Peace Conference. "Why are the Zaxlarians always the ones serving tea and cookies at these events?" Her mother smoothed her daughter's antennae, choosing her words carefully. "Well, sweetheart, let's just say we learned the importance of good manners the interesting way." That seemed to stop the priming up process, and she tried again with the mandatory explanation. "By the time we got back to the garage, the lady was flying." Across the conference hall, the Zaxlarian delegation was indeed serving refreshments, each member wearing their ceremonial service pins reading Galaxy's political species 200 years running. They had turned courtesy into an art form, their legendary politeness now a source of peculiar pride. At the Diplomatic Corps graduation ceremony on Earth, new recruits still received their traditional first assignment briefing. "Remember, if anyone gives you trouble, just smile and ask if they visited the galaxy's largest theme park lately." Works every time. The human ambassador's opening speech that year, as always, began with the traditional words. "In memory of Emma Chen, who taught the galaxy that manners matter, usually the easy way, but we're flexible." In schools across the galaxy, children learned the rhyme. Little Emma loved the stars, got politeness near and far. When someone chose to be unkind, humans helped them change their mind. The Zaxlarian embassy on Earth had become famous for its weekly lessons learned tea parties, where the ambassadors cheerfully served cookies while reciting their species' history. They had turned their punishment into performance art, and somehow that made it even better. ECAS, the original colony AI, had been upgraded to run the entire memorial park. Its sarcasm now served as the park's main attraction. "Welcome to Emma's Memorial Park, where we turned an empire into hospitality specialists. No refunds, but we do give out free lessons in consequence management." But perhaps the most telling change was visible in the Galactic Dictionary. Under the entry for human, it simply read, "C. Why Manners Matter. Cross-references. The Polite Revolution. Emma's Law." And that time someone really should have said please. And somewhere, in a special corner of the park that had once been the Zaxlarian War Council chamber, a small hologram of a little girl still played. She was forever 8 years old, forever laughing, forever teaching the galaxy's greatest lesson. Being nice isn't just right, it's smart. Ask anyone, they'll tell you. Politely, of course.